Welcome to the second edition of Thought Leadership Thursdays, a new concept that we launched a little while ago. On a daily basis, we get various questions from our investor community, and they're all about things investing, not just our view on the market and how structured notes work or when the next note's coming out, but on things that, they've heard about something, but they don't know for sure. So the objective of Thought Leadership Thursdays, or TLT, is going to be about sharing information on things that investors should know. Our sessions take place online on the second Thursday of each month, and the 45-minute educational sessions are on topics of interest to investors. We invite guest speakers, like we've invited this evening, to share their knowledge and insights to our community. And if there are any particular topics that you would like us to cover, please let us know. You can drop a note into the chat or drop me an email. I have put Kuda's contact details in the chat for anybody that does want to chat with him directly afterwards. And so you'll just scroll up. It is at the top of the chat. So tonight, our guest speaker, as I mentioned, is Kuda from Currencies Direct. Currencies Direct focus on getting the best deal for global clients on their international transfers. And they also help South African residents and non-residents navigate the complexities when it comes to dealing with the South African Reserve Bank. But as usual, first we need to do some housekeeping. Go there. So Cashbox is authorized and regulated in both Mauritius and South Africa. All of our disclosure information is available on our website, and the information that you receive here is for education to assist you guys make informed decisions. So what we present shouldn't be taken as advice or recommendation. It is for information purposes. So moving on, what we're going to be covering tonight, starting with Kuda, who started his career as a business analyst, and all his roles since then have included foreign exchange components, ultimately resulting in where he is today with Currencies Direct. Having lived and studied and worked in Asia, Europe, the US, and Africa, he's got a broad understanding of the nuances involved in global money transfers, along with an appreciation of the challenges that can be often presented to one due to the regulatory differences between countries and that are subject to their respective exchange control regulations. Topics he's going to be covering tonight are going to include why would one use a treasury outsourcing company such as Currencies Direct opposed to using your bank, how Currencies Direct help individuals to optimize their foreign exchange transfers, and then as well as tips and tricks that you guys should know about or be aware of. Should anyone want to contact Kuda, as I said, his details are in the chat. And then with that, Kuda, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much to Cashbox and Jill for allowing me to come and share my thoughts. And thank you for that little blur. I forget how some of those make you feel a bit more grander than you actually think you are. It's a nice reminder. As Joe mentioned, I am Kuda from Currencies Direct. We are foreign exchange specialists. Now, I'd like to give you a full overview or explanation of exactly who we are and what we do. So to give you a full scope and get started, I just want to confirm, or at least properly define, as Joe mentioned, we are a treasury outsourcing company. Now, what exactly is that? It's just a fancy term to say that we work directly with the banks and through them are able to offer a particular function that they do, but in our own style. So in our case, that is forex transfers and exchange control. Next thing I'd like to quickly touch on is the why. Why would you use a treasury outsourcing company, or specifically in this case, a foreign exchange specialist? The main reasons that clients usually go for are, number one, to get better service than you would from the banks. Number two, get better guidance compared to the banks on how to best move your funds and handle your transfers and the likes. And then last but not least, to save money on the exchange rates, which is usually the biggest selling point for a lot of people to actually use a treasury outsourcing company. So with that, let me get started. So as mentioned, Currencies Direct, we are two brands in South Africa. There's Currencies Direct and there's Exchange for Free. For all intents and purposes, the two of them are exactly the same. The only reason that they're two different branches or two different brands is because that Currencies Direct made their name mainly in the property, immigration, and conveyancing space with attorneys, and Exchange for Free made their name mainly in the financial advisory space. They used to operate as two separate companies, but in 2017, Currencies Direct acquired Exchange for free, and that's how they became one. Rather than actually merge them, they just let them stay as two separate brands. So often when we deal with clients, we'll usually then let you know which of the two is probably better fit for your requirements. Our equity partners are Corsair, Palamon, and Blackstone, and those are all in the US, and those are the ones who mainly make a lot of our day-to-day decisions. To give you a figure or a better global footprint of how we work, we have over 20 branches all over the world, everywhere from South Africa, United States, all over Europe, as well as India and Australia. And the main benefit of this is that we have settlements accounts all over the world, which allow us to reduce the costs for client transfers, as well. It also means that we can not only help clients sending money out of South Africa, but can also help them bring money into South Africa cheaply, as well as send money anywhere else. So if you're looking to send money from US to Australia, we can help with that whole portion without you having to actually get the banks involved or come through South Africa itself. Moving on. Now, you're going to see a lot of slides with data on them. So I'm going to summarize this slide for you. And what this slide basically says is that we are excellent and we are good. That's pretty much a good summary. I'm going to touch on a couple of the other main things down the line over the course of the presentation. But ideally, that's pretty much what the slide is. We established in 1996, over 400,000 customers now, over 20 global offices as mentioned. And we do quite a bit of transfers. We're just over 250 billion now for the last year. And we have a pretty solid rating on Trustpilot for our service. Now, in the style of presentation I'm going to give tonight is going to be more based on the main questions we get from clients and then how I would answer them, or at least our recommendations is how to treat those different queries that we get through. And hopefully then that will help and kind of contextualize a lot of the queries you get and how they can help you ideally in your day-to-day lives. So the first question we often get, what are your rates and fees? Now, this is a fun one to answer because we have no fees or rates that we actually charge for clients. The only exception is that for transfers below 100,000 Rand, we charge 375 Rand. Above that, there is no account opening fee. There's no account monthly fee, no dormant account fee that we open up for you. There is no fee at all, no commission, no transfer fee. And we work with Investec and Capitec Business Bank, through which we have our different currencies that we can offer for clients, as well as the different services we provide. Now, the next question after I've said that is that, well, that sounds too good to be true. If you don't charge any fees, how exactly do you make money? And where we make money is on the margin. Now, for those who don't know, banks actually make money as well on the margin. Now, for those who don't know what margin is, if you go onto Google and you type in what is $1 to Rand now, there's a rate that you get there. But if you go to your bank, there are two different rates that you see there. Usually a buy and a sell or a bid and ask spread. That's the difference between what you see on Google and what you see at the bank is the margin. Simplified is just the markup that the bank actually puts to make money on your foreign exchange transfer. So a lot of people think that if the bank isn't charging any commissions or the likes, there's nothing, it's a free transfer. No, the bank is actually making the money on the actual margin in there. To use the example that we have there on the screen, you've got market rate there as 18. This is what you'd see if you maybe went on Google. And then if you went to the bank, you'd see 1850. Now, the 1850 is the inclusion of the margin that the bank has put to actually make money on your transfer. In this case, the margin that they've added there is 0.5, which basically, if you like to speak in percentages, is just under 3% that they're putting on as the markup for the actual exchange rate. If you came to us, you're getting closer to about 1% to the actual margin that we add on top. So you'd be getting 1815 as a rate that you send out. So that's the sense, in terms of sense, for those who like to speak in that regard, is about 2%. But basically, you're saving 35 cents for that transfer. Simplified, that means that the bank, and now because the rates are higher, just keep in mind this is for sending money out. If you're bringing money in, you'd get a lower fee because obviously the bank needs to take off the money because they need to buy low and sell high. In this case, that means by using a treasury outsourcing company like Currencies Direct, you're looking to save money on the exchange rate. Using this example, you're looking to save about 2% for the actual exchange rate, which on R1 million is about 20,000 Rand on the actual fee. So whenever again you go to the bank and you think there is no hidden fee or they're only charging you that 400 for the SWIFT fee and 600 for commission, that's it. The percentage that they hit in that exchange rate is where they're actually making money. Now, to be a bit more transparent with that, The next question we then get is who's the best and who's the best least, or the least best, sorry. Now from the big four, just to give you context, it goes from left to right as to regards to who has the best rates and who has the worst rates. Standard Bank typically is known to have the best rates. That's usually for those who know the Shift app, same setup, through Standard Bank. You're looking for between about 0.8% to about 1.2% that they usually add on their margin. In the middle, you've got apps and FNB. They typically add between 1 and 2% on the margin for the exchange rate, and it fluctuates based on the amount you're transferring as well as the currency that you're transferring. So your majors such as the US dollar, pound, euros will usually be priced on the lower end, and then Aussie dollar, Chinese yuan, Japanese yen, those kind of currencies are priced higher up on the end. And then Nedbank right at the end is usually pricing anything from about 1.5% for the margin all the way up to 4% that we've seen clients lose on that actual transaction. Again, all of them will have given you a commission or transfer commission cost of maybe 400 Rand or the commission extra for 200 Rand for Swift fee and the likes. What you don't know is that percentage that's hidden in. Basically, that means that if you bank with a Nedbank, you benefit a lot by using a foreign exchange specialist like us. Whereas on the flip side, Standard Bank, you might only gain a little bit. Now, in the same light, if you haven't noticed as well, you probably noticed that they also ordered in the direction of percepted service level. So Standard Bank clients will typically have the most complaints about dealing with Standard Bank, especially when they need to get to customer service. Whereas on the flip side, Nedbank is typically known to better offer streamlined service and a better service overall. So with treasury outsourcing companies, our mission is to offer you Standard Bank-like rates with Nedbank service or even better, just so you get a better package and therefore we make money on the process. Now, with the margin I explained in the earlier page, when we've then taken off the discounted margin for you for the exchange rate and we've sent the funds off, how we make money is that the bank actually splits that little bit of margin with us. And because in a year we transfer over 250 billion, the little percentage of 1% actually starts making up quite a bit in terms of how much we make money in the process. And our teams locally aren't that big. We're looking at about 70 people in total. Our overheads are small, so it's not necessary for us to actually charge additional fees and the likes. Speaking of margins, just keep in mind as well, nice quick tip, is that when it comes to horrendous margins that you might experience out there in the world, if you go to the airport, if you've ever wondered why you lose so much money at the airport, it's because the exchange rate that they usually hide there, the markup in there, is often we've seen anything from 20 to 30% on the exchange rate there. So the best tip there is do not change money at the airport. Rather go to a bank, or you really rather use your card when you travel for that whole process. And the last thing to also keep in mind is that whilst I've explained the order of how well they price their clients when these banks are sending money out of the country, keep in mind when the rates that they use when you bring funds into the country are different. And they're often much higher because at that point, the bank knows that you don't really have much of a choice then when you're receiving the funds, and you're not likely to tell them to bounce the funds back because you don't like the rate that you're getting. As a result, in that case, if you're ever sending funds into South Africa, the recommendation is to always have them converted on the sending side before they land, so they land as rands. And that way the SA Bank has no conversion to actually do at that point in time. Otherwise, if you send from the US as US dollars, the bank locally is going to apply whatever margin they want to the US dollars that land in the account and then put that into your Rand account, meaning that you basically don't have much control over the last amount there. Alternatively, just use a current company like Currencies Direct and we can take care of you right from the beginning. Moving on, this is a question we often get from clients who are traveling. Now, of the banks, which has the cheapest card for foreign exchange? Capitec Bank. Very unusual. A lot of people wonder about who even banks with Capitec Bank. Well, that's probably why they offer that really attractive rate. Now, debit cards for any bank, whether it's Standard Bank, FNB, or the likes, they typically charge 4% that they add. So whenever you're buying something off Amazon, or you're paying for your Netflix account and the likes, 4% is usually in the exchange rate that the bank uses to convert if you use a debit card. If you use a credit card, it's 2% that the banks will typically add on. And with Capitec, they add 0%. And that's mainly because I guess they're looking to try and attract a new level of clientele to their platform. And currently, they therefore mean that whatever you see on Google is often exactly what you get whenever you convert funds through them or you swipe your card while traveling. So if you ever need to wonder which bank to use when traveling, Capitec Bank, the credit card they have is the best one to use. And recommendation again, use a credit card when traveling because that offers it's much easier for you to claim back if there's ever any fraud on your card as opposed to a debit card. Moving on, then what do I need to know? If I know how margin works, how to save money and the likes. SA residents, this is defined as anybody who has a barcoded SA ID or that green ID booklet. If you have one of those, then you are allowed in a single year transfer 1 million rand, and that's called your single discretionary allowance without any approvals. Above R1 million, you can apply to SARS. That's an additional 10 million that they can give you, and that's called an AIT or approval for international transfer. We can do that for you for clients, and it's a complimentary service we offer for clients, so long as you then do the subsequent transfer through us. And then last but not least, if you want to transfer over the total of the 1 million from your single discretionary allowance and the 10 million from SARS, we then need to go to the Reserve Bank to get approval for you for that process. Now, question we get here is often, are they looking to take more tax from me during this process? No, they're not looking to take more tax from you. All they're doing is mainly due diligence on the actual funds that you're looking to send out. And that is not your brother's, friend's, cousin's money that they're sending out on your behalf. You're just making sure that these are actually your funds. Ultimately, though, it is important to make sure that your tax records and all your tax affairs are in order. Otherwise, SARS and the likes will not process these applications in when they come through. And if you like timelines, they typically take about 4 to 6 weeks for them to give approval from both ends. So keep that in mind so that if you ever have any deadlines, if there's a note that's been released and you need to get it done quicker, it's better to get those approvals done now or later so that you don't have any hindrances later down the line. Both approvals last from 12 months from the date of issue, so it always gives you a lot of leeway in terms of when you can use it. For non-residents, this is anyone that does not have an SAID, what we call a full foreigner at that point in time, or anyone who has ever financially immigrated, what is now called ceased to be a tax resident. For those individuals, you are required to show proof of funds introduced for you to be able to send the funds back out of the country. The best way you can do that is basically your proof of payment. Once you send the funds off, there's one called an MT103 SWIFT. It basically is like bank language that tells the bank that this bank sent the funds and this bank acknowledged receipt of the funds. And that way, it confirms that the funds actually went across. That's your best way to actually keep that record. Alternatively, having a copy of the statement where the funds were credited in South Africa when the funds landed here is another alternative that you can actually have. And the main reason for that requirement is that the Reserve Bank just wants to make sure that South Africans are not using foreigners to circumvent the above rules. So that way, foreigners can only take, or non-residents can only take funds out of the country that they can prove that they brought in themselves. Anything else basically has to go through approval, for example, inheritance or anything else like that, but that's a bit more straightforward. And then last but not least, you can repatriate 75% of your SA income every year if you're a non-resident. 75 mainly because it's expected you're paying tax on the money and you also need a little bit to live on while you're here as well. Moving on, so of all those processes, how can Currencies Direct assist? As mentioned, we can convert funds into pretty much any currency out there in the world, whether you're sending money out of South Africa into South Africa or any other world currency or world country out there in the world. We also have no hidden fees and we save you money on the exchange rate. And we do this because the amount of money that we send through our partner banks, that's Investec and Capitec Business again, allows us to have a bit of leeway in negotiating with them for them to actually reduce the exchange rate for the client that we then use, that we refer to them for their transfers. And in that margin that we've reduced for you is where we make our money, as mentioned. We also handle all the exchange control paperwork as a complimentary service that includes any of the SARS AIT processes, as well as any of the Reserve Bank approvals that may be needed for any complicated places and the likes. Last but not least, we have a 5-star rating on Trustpilot for our excellent service. Now, service is one of those tricky things to explain. So the way I like to put it in is, who here has ever in your life dealt with a bank's customer service team, and after that interaction, you thought, you know what, I loved that so much that I'd love to do it again? I don't see any hands being raised. So that's pretty much how we like to differentiate ourselves. We're in your faces, we're available. You always have our direct contact details. And throughout the process, you always know who to call or who to speak to for you to have any queries resolved, just so you can have a better service throughout the process. And if you have any questions, you can calmly let us know and we can then advise appropriately, as opposed to worrying that whenever you tell your bank an answer, they might be trying to catch you out. We're not trying to do that. We're actually trying to help you best in moving your funds. And then if you are interested, how does it usually work for a treasury outsourcing company to run your whole process? It begins by having an initial discussion. And again, the point of that initial discussion is to just make sure that we understand your requirement, where you're sending the funds to, and we can therefore offer the best service or the best product for you for that process. We then proceed to open the account and then handle any of the red tape, that is your SARS approvals for international transfer, Reserve Bank approvals that are needed for that whole process. And from there, we proceed to book the currency and make your payment for you. The payments, for those interested, are usually reflecting on the other side within 1 to 2 working days. That's the typical standard for actual transfers. And then next, the best part, Forex tips. Now, these are a couple of insights, a couple of nuances that I myself, I guess, have appreciated through my role, and a lot of the questions that we often see or issues that we see clients face. So I'd just like to leave you with a couple of Forex tips before I then wrap up. First one is scams. These are our favorite ones. They come in quite often, and especially during Christmas. It's nearly as if the scammers themselves also need to make money, a Christmas bonus for themselves. So anyway, the first one to keep an eye out for is the inheritance scam. Guys, for your loved ones or for yourself. If you ever get email from some Nigerian prince or from some British company promising you that you have inherited from some long lost uncle you have never met in your life 10 million rand, and all you need to do is pay them 5,000 rand for them to finish up the attorney fees, that is a scam, guys. If you ever have to pay money to receive money, that is likely a scam. Your best bet in that situation, if you really do want to entertain it, ask them to draw down from the amount you're supposed to get to pay those fees, so you don't actually have to pay anything yourself. Second one to watch out for is email interception. That has become more popular, especially when dealing with attorney firms and the likes, because they are often quite the victims of your scammers. If you ever get banking details over email, please always give a call to a trusted number to verify those bank details before you make a payment. Now, you don't have to do this every time you have to make a payment, just always the first time before you make your first payment to the place, because obviously from then on, you're often just using that saved beneficiary in your bank details. Always just make sure, because email interception happens so quickly, and if you do make the payment to the wrong place, it can be nearly impossible to try and get those funds back later down the line. So rather be safe than sorry later down the line. Reserve Bank scam, that's another popular one we see. That is often when people have been promised they've been sent funds. That usually ties in with inheritance scam or different scams that the scammers are running. But basically, the gist is they say that your funds are stuck at the Reserve Bank and that you need to pay a little bit of a fee for them to process the Reserve Bank process or approval, so that you can actually then have the funds cleared into your account. Again, if you ever have the Reserve Bank themselves contacting you directly, that is a scam. The Reserve Bank does not ever deal directly with direct customers or clients or corporates or individuals. They will always deal through your bank. So for example, if you were getting the funds meant to be sent to Standard Bank will reach out to you, not the Reserve Bank. So if you ever get that situation, guys, that is likely a scam. Please just be wary. Again, with any of them, if you're ever uncertain or unsure, feel free to give me a ring. I'm more than happy to clarify. Next tip. Oh, so this one goes with the question we often get, which is, what is the Rand going to do? Now, as you can see, this is the Rand over the course of 5 years. You can see a lot of ups and downs. The struggle with the Rand is that pretty much anything and everything will affect it. And annoyingly often, anything will always affect it to the downside or to our loss, at least those of us who are in South Africa. So you can see the Ramaphosa, Zuma's exit, had a benefit to the Rand at some point in time. Trump's situation had a benefit or had a worsening situation to us. With that and COVID, which just was complicated for everyone, and then load shedding towards the end again and the grey listing that negatively impacted the Rand. Ultimately, the point here is that if you can see this level of chaos within a 5-year chart, keep in mind that on a daily basis, it can be even more volatile. You're trying to guess. If we had a crystal ball for what the Rand was actually doing, I can probably assure you we'd rather be trading the currency and making the money that way, as opposed to actually doing client transfers. But ideally, we do not have a crystal ball, so we can never really tell you what the Rand is going to do and how then best to kind of move your funds. What I can do instead, though, is give you a bit of a framework to use whenever you do have to make the transfer. And the best chart to use for that is this last one. Now, this is the Rand just over past 12 years of performance. As you can see, in 2012, we were sitting at just around $8. Sorry, 8 Rand to the dollar. Nearly sounds like a dream at this point in time, like an unattainable one. But we were 8 Rand to the dollar back in 2012. and now we are just under 18 Rand to the dollar. Now, as you can see, the Rand over that period has been depreciating against your majors, that is your dollar, your pound, and your euros, by on average about 6% per year. That means that in any case, the Rand is more likely to be losing value on any day than it is for you to gain value. That's just based on this chart. As a result, the advice we usually give people, or the recommendation we'd give, is that if you have a fixed commitment, whether in costs or you have a deadline, whether there's a note that has come out and it closes up in this month, guys, do not try and gamble with the Rand. Whatever, as soon as you have the funds, get whatever rate you get on that day and set the funds off. On the flip side, if you don't have a fixed commitment and you don't have a deadline at least, if feeling a bit lucky, you can of course wait. But what I do like to tell people then is, if you're looking for any benefit from the Rand, rather consider it from the perspective of, can you afford to lose 5% within that any month or any space of time that you're waiting for that benefit that you might actually accrue. So where some people will try and wait saying, I think the Rand might benefit or move in my favor by about 3 to 5%, keep in mind you can do the opposite. If losing that 5% is going to hurt you, then guys, I always recommend rather take the rate today than tomorrow, because again, it is more likely for you to lose the rate or to at least see a worse rate tomorrow than it is a better one. Hopefully this will actually stop and we'll start getting to more consistent or lower, better levels for our sakes. But ideally, as things line up, that is a recommendation I typically give to people. And then a tool that some people can use if you do like to kind of, let's say, for example, you don't have the funds immediately available, but you do see the Rand at a level that you very much like, there is something called a forward contract that you can use. It is a service or function, a feature that we offer at Currencies Direct. It allows you to lock in the rate today for use at a later date down the line. It is pretty much open, so people can lock the rate in for 6 months up to a year if you'd like to. The only catch is that you need to have 10% of the funds that you'd like to transfer, and typically you need to have a requirement to transfer about 500,000. But it doesn't mean that you lock in the rate for today and you can then opt to use that option later down the line in 6 months. It is a binding contract. So once you've locked in the rates, if the Rand does get better than that, you are still locked in at what would now be at that point the worst rate. But at the same time, often because people expect it to get worse, if the Rand is much better with what you locked in, then you just still use that same rate at that point in time. Whichever option you do use though, once you have made your transfers, ladies and gentlemen, I please ask, you do not look at any Forex apps, any more charts to see what the rate is the next day after you've made your transfer, because you're just going to hurt your feelings. So once you've made your transfer, please make sure you ignore the charts and the likes for at least 2-3 weeks after that. And I think with that, I hope I've left you some information. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kuda. Do you want to drop your share and then let's see any questions that we have? So one question that I've got, I think I know the answer, but other people might not. Is this only for private individuals or businesses, or is it for businesses as well? So like for their trading, you know, like them buying or selling internationally?
Their currency. So importers, exporters, and the likes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a feature that is available to companies as well. You can use the same functions. The forward contract is actually something importers use quite often, because often for an importer, you've sent the goods off sometimes and you're waiting for the payment to come through. But at that point, you've already locked in your Rand value at this point in time, and you're worried that the Rand may fluctuate against you by the time that you actually get the payment. So often they'll use the expected funds coming in to lock in the rate up until when they expect the payment to come through, and that allows them to just kind of hedge that off. Only thing else to mention with corporates is that corporates don't have a limit as to how much they can send, but they are limited to only paying invoices. So corporate can't just send funds because they feel like it. There has to be an invoice or a particular reason tied to them actually sending funds out.
Okay, perfect. Great. Any other questions for anybody? You were also very, very quiet.
That usually means either I didn't make sense at all or I explained very well. I hope it's the latter.
Yeah, Kuda, I've got a question for you. It's Chris.
Go for it.
Yeah, you rated the big four.
Yes.
But you guys use Capitec as one of your banks and investment.
Correct.
Where does Capitec rate on that scale?
With their Offerings, I think if you don't come through us, then you're looking for about, they're probably sitting with FNB and ABSA, so in the middle. So you're looking about usually between 1% and 2% that Capitec offers if you're not with us. If you're using through Currencies Direct, then often we are more kind of pegged towards, look, our largest clients will typically get rates from about 0.5, and it goes upwards to maybe about 1.5, 2% in some cases. For your information, when it comes to Cashbox, we have an agreement with them where their clients get, regardless of the amount you're transferring, 0.6% as your actual margin.
And businesses, that obviously is a different rate can apply.
No, it'll be the same thing. So for businesses, if you're being referred through as Cashbox or your Cashbox client, we'll still offer you the same 0.6. And in some cases with businesses, we can actually still just nudge you a bit down again to that 0.5. But for private individuals, usually we just sit you off at 0.6.
Okay. And I'm just checking the email. Are your details shared somewhere?
Yeah, I'm going to repost it now.
Thank you.
There we go. I've posted Kuda's email address. Okay. Right. So Greg Skelton's going to be in touch. He's got something tricky.
Also,
You're going to keep you on your
I'm
toes.
excited. I'm excited.
Pat's going to get hold of you. Susan was very happy. That was excellent. We need some questions, guys.
Are we using?
Are you
Yeah.
using blockchain financial rails or just traditional finance?
Just traditional finance. So the rulings by the Reserve Bank against blockchain are still a bit gray and quite tricky. So if you've noticed, so during COVID, we used to do a lot of the arbitrage that people used to do. What happened is, I guess, SARS and the Reserve Bank got annoyed by people taking advantage of that loophole and the like. So they've closed it off for some recent regulations they have. As a result, there is no blockchain processing we can do. We can help people once they've converted the blockchain or the crypto they have into whatever fiat currency they have with the actual broker, and then we can bring that back for them or move it to their firm. But typically, blockchain now has quite a lot of stringent requirements and a lot of due diligence that often the banks are required to perform to make sure that the funds are moving correctly and that they're accounted for whenever the client they converts them into crypto or uses.
So can I ask a question? So we have a number of our investors, and they're actually on the call, that they have financially immigrated.
Yes.
And do you have clients? We have clients all over the world. We've got clients in 19 countries. So if somebody's, say, based in the UK and their base currency is pounds, and now they want to go into a dollar investment, you would be able to do that for them.
Correct. So we can assist again if it's the UK client. So our head office for Currencies Direct is in the UK. So we actually onboard them there with our UK bank, and we use Barclays there in the UK. So they're not having to send the funds over here to South Africa. They're pretty much just depositing into that Barclays account that we set up for them. And then we take care of the conversion to euros wherever they want from there. The same applies with the US clients. There's a US settlement bank. We use JP Morgan in the US. And then in Europe, we've got a couple of different banks that we use as well, but the main one, again, being Barclays. So pretty much anywhere in the world, wherever the client is, there's often an account near them that simplifies the process. So it's basically an EFT for them there, and then we take care of the actual international transfer and conversion at our preferred or discounted rates for the client.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Sorry, if I may, I don't know how to raise my hand on Zoom. I can't.
Hey, yeah.
There's two very quick and easy questions. The one is, Kuda, if you can give us an idea of the margin at Investec. And secondly, do you also handle transfers to Mozambique? We've been doing it for a couple of years, and it went actually very well, and it's just becoming more and more difficult. And you know, money gets stuck in the process, and then their Reserve Bank need documentation. Then eventually they pay only 30%, and 70% must go into a US dollar account. Also, just want to hear if you can help with that kind of transaction as well.
All right.
Thank you.
So to start, you had Investec can help with the transfer as well as then basically moving funds, the stickiness of the Reserve Bank and the likes. Investec, they typically offer around 1% that we found. So typically 1%. After all, I think because of their client base, given that they're mainly also helping clients build their portfolios and the likes, they put their fees everywhere else. That's at least how we've reasoned it. So you will often be paying the most fees for an investing account. They will not take any extra or be cheeky with you when it comes to the actual foreign exchange, because again, the portfolio fees and everything align. So Investec typically, for at least for the exchange rate, is pretty solid. Mozambique, can we assist? We can assist. We can help with clients looking to send funds to Mozambique. But to give you context on the stickiness, so a lot of the additional requests you'd be getting from the Reserve Bank are a result of South Africa having been grey listed. So basically, because we are now a higher risk country, Mozambique is also considered a high risk country. Any movement between countries where they're both classed as high risk, it requires that additional due diligence. So I'm sure you remember when they had the grey listing happen, you had advisors and different analysts speak about how it was going to increase the cost of actually doing business. That's ideally what was meant here. So whilst we can help you, I don't want to promise you that it'll be much simpler. The same requirements might actually come through. Ideally, though, what we do with our process is just try and put everything in advance so that by the time we're making the payment, it doesn't get stuck. So you know everything in advance, as opposed to making the payment, having it get stuck, and then asking you throughout the process, which can be very frustrating. Our typical approach is to make sure that all the approvals are done in advance. Therefore, by the time the payment is made, you're clear that it's going through. There shouldn't be any issues from that point.
So in closing, Thought Leadership Thursdays, thank you until next time. And you don't know what you don't know. And Cashbox Global is here to change that.